Auburn takes down Samford 45-13 to start 3-0, a hot start for the Tigers. We'll recap it and look at some storylines for this Auburn team as they get ready for conference play next week today on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Coon.
Welcome into the Crowded Booth. I'm Will Maness. We're going to talk about Auburn's big win over Samford, 45-13. The Tigers start 3-0. A bit of a surprise considering start to the season, how the Tigers have played. Interesting that Auburn and Ole Miss, the only two undefeated teams in the SEC West through the first 3 weeks of the year. But we're talking about Auburn and Samford today. So look back at this game. Auburn, kind of an ugly win, that the score does not reflect it. I was talking with Bryce before we started recording. LSU took down Mississippi State 45-14. Auburn beat Samford 45-13. Two very different games, two very different feels to games with similar scores. Just quick overview. Auburn, Peyton Thorne started quarterback, had two interceptions, threw an interception on the first drive in the end zone. So it was a pretty lackluster start, a scoreless first quarter. Like I say, Auburn got down in the red zone. Peyton Thorne threw that pick. But then 17 in the second half, or second quarter, I should say. So really good to see him have a positive reaction to that early interception. And if you were watching the game, you saw Hugh Freeze get on real hard on the sideline, and the fans were hard on him as well as he went off the field. But just comparing stats, Auburn 500 total yards, 562 total yards in this game, 222 on the ground. We've heard Hugh Freeze talk about balance on offense. That was, Auburn did a really good job balance of this game. You just look at the yards. The running game looked better, 5 yards per rush, but a lot of that was carried by Peyton Thorne. Thorne finished this one with 123 rushing yards. He's the first Auburn quarterback to rush for over 100 yards since Nick Marshall in 2014. Thorne added 2 touchdowns on the ground. You look at the rest of the rushing numbers. Jarquez Hunter, 11 carries, just 37 yards. Tamari Austin, 8 carries, just 25 yards. Brian Battie providing a spark. First time we've really seen some positive from him. 5 carries, 21 yards. Hunter and Austin, those guys got to get more carries. Auburn's got to be better in the run game. If you take Thorne out and Ashford out, because Ashford added 17 yards on 2 carries, you take those out, Auburn's only averaging about 3.5 yards a carry. And it's going to be tough to win games in the SEC, especially starting with Texas A&M this week, only averaging 3.5 yards a carry. Looking at receiving numbers, Jay Fair, 7 catches for 93 yards. Jay Fair has emerged as wide receiver 1 on this offense. He and Thorne have a really good connection, pretty evident through the first 3 games. Rivaldo Fairweather, 5 catches, 57 yards. I mean, he's your big play guy. They're gonna target him in the red zone. He caught the game-winning touchdown pass against Cal. You're going to see that big number 13. They're going to try to get him one-on-one in the red zone every single week. Shane Hooks caught his first Auburn touchdown pass, had 3 catches. And Micah Riley, no more Ducker when he first came to Auburn. He was Micah Riley Ducker, caught a 32-yard touchdown pass from Robbie Ashford. So for everybody that says Robbie Ashford can't throw, you should go look at that play. So Auburn defensively much better than the offense. I think the identity of this Auburn team has kind of emerged itself after 3 games. Auburn's going to be a defensive first team. The defense is going to take this team as far as it goes. Just the defense gave up 144 passing yards, just 74 rushing yards. That's huge. That's huge. If you can hold a team, especially in the SEC, under 100 yards rushing, you're probably going to win that game. So that was good to see. Turnover-wise, Auburn had 2 interceptions, no fumbles, no forced fumbles. But this defense has done a really good job of creating turnovers, which is a huge sign. I think, you can look at how a defense stops the run. You look at rushing yards for Samford. look at passing yards, I don't think those translate, but creating turnovers, I think, does translate, especially interceptions, because that's defensive backs really making plays. And Auburn's got some playmakers in that secondary: Jalen Simpson, DJ James, Donovan Kaufman. When he gets healthy, he's going to be a big player on that defense. 2 interceptions, that's big. Auburn, the defense, they got to keep creating turnovers. Auburn had 2 fumbles of their own, lost one, and like I said, the 2 interceptions by Peyton Thorne. So some things to clean up for Auburn offensively, but they look like things you can clean up. The 2 interceptions by Thorne, the bad one was the first one, throwing it in the end zone. He tried to force a throw. It actually hit the Auburn receiver in the shoulder, so kind of a deflected ball, ended up in the hands of the Samford defense. But you know, he just tried to force it in the end zone. The next one, he tried to take a deep shot to Coy Moore. I believe it was in the 3rd quarter. If you go back and watch that play, Auburn has 2 shallow crossers who are wide open. I mean, there's not another DB in the picture around either of those guys. So Thorne just tried to take a shot, threw it into triple coverage, ended up intercepted. That's an easy one to clean up. I think that's pretty much it for the game itself. Let's move on and talk about the quarterbacks, Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford. A report came out Saturday before the game that Robbie Ashford had been taking snaps at wide receiver during the week. I didn't like that. When I read that, I didn't really think it was real when I read that. And I still don't think it. And he didn't play a single snap lined up at wide receiver. I don't think that's good for this football team. I don't think that's good for Robbie Ashford. I don't think it's good for the offense as a whole, unless Auburn's just going to throw him out there for some gadget plays, some trick plays. You know, Robbie Ashford is such a huge playmaker. He showed it last year: 7 passing touchdowns, 7 rushing touchdowns. Everybody's seen how well he can run, how physical of a runner he is. He really brings a dynamic in that run game that Peyton Thorne doesn't, even though Thorne really showed off his running skills against Samford. But everybody knows how good of a runner Ashford is. Hugh Freeze has said it every press conference. Robbie Ashford has a role. The success of this team is very dependent on Robbie Ashford and his role in this offense. Auburn needs Robbie Ashford playing quarterback to win games. So that report coming out that he's taking reps at wide receiver just didn't make a lot of sense to me. You know, him versus Thorne, you know, just looking at this game, the starters played well into the 4th quarter. You know, I mean, it was kind of a tight game. It was 31-13 at the start of the 4th quarter, and I think the starters got 2 drives in the 4th quarter on the offense, and I think that was really important because the offense showed really nothing in the first 2 games. Auburn really had to work out those kinks, and they kept Thorne in there with the number ones on offense and threw it a lot. He threw it 32 times. So he really showed a lot. But starting this week, conference play, going on the road, Texas A&M, it's a totally different animal, totally different environment than the one they saw at Cal. So Robbie Ashford at quarterback, it may not be a foregone conclusion that Thorne is still QB1. I said last week, I think Ashford should be the starting quarterback based on what I've seen and what I know that he can do. And what Thorne has shown, even in the past. Thorne, you know, I've said it many times. 2 years ago was great at Michigan State. Not so good last year, and then he goes in the portal. So that tells me he wasn't guaranteed the starter at Michigan State. So he's obviously not just your slam dunk home run NFL prospect. And I know Robbie Ashford's not either. And we watched him play last year, and there wasn't a ton of balance to the offense because he is lacking a lot in the passing game. He threw just 4 passes against Samford, 58 yards, and had that touchdown. But the times that he's played this year, they haven't let him throw the ball. I mean, you saw it against Cal. Every time he came in, those safeties and linebackers, they were crowding the box. They were putting 8-9 guys in the box, and they would still run the ball. You're not putting your players in position to make plays and be successful if you're going to keep running the ball against 8 or 9 guys in the box. So For me, Robbie Ashford, there's no reason to put him at wide receiver. Keep him at quarterback. I think he is a quarterback. Maybe a very specific offense for him. and the one Auburn's running right now may not be the best offense for him. But Freeze has shown he can adapt and he can change his offense. I mean, he did it with Malik Willis at Liberty and really maximized his ability and polished him as a passer and got him drafted and he's in the NFL. So the same thing can happen for Ashford. So we'll have to see. This Texas A&M is a big one. It's a big swing game for Auburn next week and a swing game for both of these quarterbacks. If Thorne struggles again, similar to how he did against Cal, you got to think Ashford's going to come in and run the offense, and they got to let him run the whole offense. Otherwise, it does no good for anybody. Let's talk about the defense now. This Auburn defense has looked really, really good the first 3 games. I mean, they pretty much won the game against Cal, kept Auburn in the game. I talked about it earlier. They create turnovers, and that's big, especially for an offense that has struggled to try to get the offense a short field. That's big, and I think that translates, and I think that'll translate this week at Texas A&M. Although it will be tough with Connor Wegman, a guy that never turned the ball over his first 14, 15 college games. It took him against Miami 2 weeks ago before he had his first turnover. But this Auburn defense has been really, really impressive. And we knew coming into the season how good the secondary was going to be. With Jalen Simpson, DJ James, those playmakers in the secondary. Simpson moving to safety this year. He had a pick Saturday against Samford. He's been really good. He is looks like he's found a home at that safety position. And DJ James, lockdown guy on the outside. He's looking like an NFL player each and every week. But this Auburn team, I think that's the identity of this team. And it's going to be the defense. The defense is going to win games for this Auburn team. It's going to keep them in games every week. And that's not what Auburn fans want to hear. And it's really not what they want to see, because the last 4 or 5 seasons of Gus Malzahn's era, it was the defense that kept Auburn in games and won Auburn games when the offense struggled. And you've got Hugh Freeze, another offensive-minded head coach, supposed to be an offensive genius, struggling on the offensive side of the ball. But, it's the old saying, it's cliche, but Auburn knows it's true. Defense wins championships. And you look at the history of Auburn football, it's been built around strong defenses. It's 2023, Auburn's honoring the 1983, 1993, and 2013 SEC champion teams, and all 3 of those teams had a really strong defense. And 2023 looks the same. I don't think they're going to reach the heights that those 3 all-time Auburn teams did, but they're built on defense. The 2004 teams built on defense. The 2006 team that won the Cotton Bowl built on that defense and an offense that just took care of the ball, ball control, scored touchdowns when they got in the red zone. And I think this team is similar to those teams. I don't think that they have the talent and the competition around them. You look at the Auburn schedule, it's tough. So I don't think that they'll win as many games as those did, but they play similar. And this team reminds me a lot of those teams. This defense first team, going to be a lot of ugly wins. I think, like I said, Samford 45-13. Score doesn't sound like it, but it was an ugly win because the offense was just lackluster. But you look at these position groups, the linebackers, they showed out against Cal. Eugene Asante led the way. He had a pretty quiet game against Samford. Definitely not the big game he had against Cal. Let's see. He's so far down this list, I don't even see him. Caleb Wooden actually led the team with just 6 tackles, 1.5 for a loss. Asante just had 1 tackle against Samford, so he definitely didn't have the big night that he did against Cal. But Ron Robertson said it's a linebacker-led defense, and you've got Wooden at linebacker. You've got Nixon, linebacker, had 5 tackles. Keldrick Falk, he's an edge, so he's kind of that hybrid. He had 3 tackles. and a pass breakup. The true freshman, a good night from him. But that's the strength of this team. The linebackers in the secondary, the defensive line. I said it after the Cal. I still think it after the Samford game. There's only one player on this roster on the defensive line that should be on an SEC roster, and that's Marcus Harris. He had 2 tackles, had a tackle for loss. He's the best. He leads that defensive line. You know, the success of the D-line kind of depends on him in the middle. You know, he can take on double teams. You know, we've seen him get in the backfield. He gets sacks. He had a sack against Cal. And then the other guy, Keldrick Faulk, probably your second best player on that defensive line. So and it's going to be tough to win games in the SEC with a poor defensive line. And that's the biggest problem for this Auburn team as a whole. They can't control the line of scrimmage. Offensively, the offensive line can't control the line of scrimmage. You know, historically, Auburn, you get in a short yardage situation, you knew what was coming. It was going to be that power run, and Auburn was going to just run right through you and get that first down. This team hasn't shown that. And I don't think that this team can do that offensively. See a lot of these second and short, third and short, even on fourth down, we've seen them on fourth and short. They're trying to throw 50-50 balls on the outside. That's not Auburn to me. And that's not Auburn to a lot of people that have watched Auburn for a long time. And defensively, it's the same problem. That they don't have the size up front to really give any confidence that they can stand up there and just make a stop on third and short, second short, fourth and short. They're really reliant on the linebackers and the safeties getting downhill and helping in the running game. And that's fine if they're making plays. But starting this week against Texas A&M, you know what Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino are going to want to do. They're guys that run the ball. They like a physical run game. But once they get these safeties creeping up, they're going to hit you over the top with the play action. And they've got a quarterback in Connor Wegman that is smart enough with the ball, good enough with the ball, accurate enough, strong enough arm that he can burn you. And they've got playmakers on the outside to win one-on-ones. So Auburn, you can't rely on safeties coming down and helping in the run game. You can't, because it hurts you, I should say, on the back end against big passes. Georgia's going to do the same thing. LSU after that's going to do the same thing. So, you know, but if this Auburn defense, if they can figure something out up front, you know, they've got transfers, Nasili Kite on that defensive line. You've got Steven Sings on that defensive line, guys that coming up from lower levels. If they can just figure it out and make some plays, you know, to me, I think it's a technique thing. I don't know a lot about the defensive line, but I think it's really a technique thing because those guys are big enough. Their size, you look at their measurables, they're big enough to make the plays. They just got to figure out how to do it against SEC offensive linemen. So there's some hope for Auburn. So that's it. That's all I got for Auburn versus Samford. Auburn win it 45-13. Crowded Booth, like and subscribe so you don't miss anything we put out. You're watching me do the Monday Auburn show. We've got Georgia show with our buddy Palmer Toms. We got live shows Mondays and Wednesdays. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any of that. Thanks and have a great day.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Coon.